Okay, welcome to, again, day 3 and our third session of today on this topic related to success. This morning we had a presentation by Dr. Frederick, who was talking about success and tapping into our vagus nerve that allows us to sort of be aware of our autonomic nervous system, the ANS, right, and use that to our advantage to make sure that we are successful through healthy balance in our life. We also, just about an hour or so ago, had a presentation on doctoral student success and certain factors that Dr. Dunn, one of the chairs in the program, has discovered from students who say that there are certain qualities in a program that have helped them be successful. So we're now going to, again, the continuation of the topic of success with Dr. Zimmerman, and he's going to talk about this book that he wrote called The 7 Anchors. And it focuses again on how to be successful sort of in life after school and what to do to make sure that you have a good start. So Daniel,
good.
Your turn. I'll
Ready,
get all the way.
Ready to rock and roll. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming here today. What I want to do is I'm going to start off with a story, and then I want you to keep this into the back of your mind as we continue to move through, and then I will introduce myself and do all that jazz. But it goes like this. Tom has just graduated from the University of Newtown and received his degree in communications. He's very excited about getting out into the real world and to start making some good money. Instead of the money he received delivering pizzas in college. Tom, thinking that nothing can stop him since he has his college degree, begins to apply for careers around his metro. As luck would have it, he receives an interview offer from the first place that he applies to, the North Shore Company. There, he would be working within the sales department, developing communications for the sales staff. Great news. Tom lands the job and begins next Monday. There was no experience required for this position, so Tom feels confident that he'll be able to get all the required training that is needed to be successful at the North Shore Company. From the North Shore Company. As Tom begins his first day on the job, he's overwhelmed by the responsibilities required and does not feel he was adequately prepped for this job. He's already blaming human resource manager and for not telling him, and the manager of his department for not warning him. In his mind, he has already quit and wishes to put out more resumes. Sarah just graduated from the University of Newtown as well, and she received her degree in communications. Strangely enough, she is also starting her first day at North Shore Company the same day as Tom for the same position. In fact, they're working together to really drive the communication strategy of the sales department. Now, unlike Tom, Sarah's extremely excited about working in the position and does not feel overwhelmed on her first day with all the responsibilities required. Sarah did her homework on the company. She asked the right questions and prepared herself for the position ahead of time. Tom assumed that he would be taken care of. Conversely, Sarah was proactive and came to her first job ready to hit the ground running. In today's presentation, we're going to be talking about a book that I wrote probably close to over a decade ago in 2010. And what's concerning is looking at how students are prepped and prepared for the real world. So in the objectives here, I'm going to give a brief historical overview of really how did I come about this? How did I come about this topic? And how did I get the information to go about and write this book? We're going to review 3 anchors, if we can get to them all. We're going to talk about success. We're going to talk about getting creative. We're going to have there's a little activity, and then we're going to talk about the anchor of productivity. And then by the end of this presentation, you should be able to apply these concepts into your daily professional and personal life. That's the goal. More importantly, you should be able to provide guidance to your students. So again, I thank you for coming. My name is Dr. Daniel Zimmerman. I'm the dean here for the School of Business and Technology. I've been in education now for quite a while. I started back in 2005 as an advisor, and we'll get into that a little bit here as we go through the history. But I've worked my way up through the ranks of the educational realm. I have a degree in the Doctor of Management with an emphasis in organizational development and change. I have my credentials of Organizational Development Certified Professional, the ODCP, and I'm a certified professional business coach or life coach or coach. Publications are listed below, and my hobbies here are learning and surviving, like most people in today's world. So the book that I wrote back in 2010 and had published was really a brainchild of everything that came to be from when I was a student advisor. And this is the cover of it. Yeah, if you wanted to, you could find it on Amazon, though I don't actively sell it because I'm actually going to be rewriting it. All right. Things have changed throughout the world, and students have changed, paradigms have changed, and there's a whole different generation of people. But I felt compelled to actually talk on the points within this book for this presentation. The back cover of this book, it discusses, I gave a little snapshot here of what the back of it would, it actually does say. So if I can read this here, have you ever wondered why certain people get ahead in the world and you don't? Are you curious why luck never seems to come your way? The answer to these questions lies in the pages of this book. In today's global world, there's an extreme lack of exposure to common sense ideals that will help anyone that can read get ahead in their life, both personally and professionally. In this book, you will learn about key exposure points that have propelled others like yourself to success in their given field. Through the exercises presented, you can alter your paradigm and come to the understanding that you are not alone through this journey, and others have walked the same path as you. You have the roadmap for this journey in your hands. All you need to do is follow it. And again, the viewpoint that I want to provide you is an academic viewpoint. Okay, so the background of the book, right? My why. All right. So a historical background. If you know me, you know my story. My story began back, in my undergraduate. And my undergraduate, if you picture me, I'm a junior. I'm going in for my advising, my last year of advising. I'm setting up for student teaching. I wanted to be a third grade teacher. I had set my heart on being a third grade teacher. You have to set up for your student teaching a good year in advance so they can put you in placement. I had followed all the rules. I was following all the rules. I had met with my academic advisor every step of the way, all the registration processes, everything. Well, push comes to shove. I get set. I'm about halfway through my senior year, and I'm waiting for my placement. I've done everything. I've done my senior seminars. I'm ready to go. And lo and behold, my advisor tells me, oh, well, you're missing these classes. Now, keep in mind, I have done everything according to plan. I did not miss a beat. I went in and worked with my advisors, and I took all the classes that were required, that I thought were required. My advisor just simply made a mistake, but it was a big mistake. So at the end of the day, I was not able to student teach. When you can't student teach, you can't graduate as a teacher. And so I needed to graduate. So what I did was I ended up getting a degree in interdisciplinary studies, which is kind of like a general studies degree, but you're able to wrap in everything that you've put together and to graduate. Now, to make matters worse, the advisor who was supposed to confirm me for graduation actually went on sabbatical. So he never even conferred my graduation. So I never even walked in the undergraduate. On top of that, they spelled my name wrong on my diploma, and I had to send it back, not once, twice. Okay, so I vowed to myself I was never, ever, ever going to let this happen to anybody ever again. And so my trek into higher education was born. And first job I got when I moved back up into the suburbs of Illinois, of the Chicagoland area, I went and worked in financial aid. Now, financial aid, you're that's kind of like just getting your feet wet. When I I was able to move into academic advising later on down the line as a student success coach. And through student success coaching, I was talking with students on a daily basis, like you should. It's all online students. And we talk to probably around 50 to 60 students a day, discussing their concerns, discussing what's going on with their classes, making sure that, they're on track to graduate. What I was noticing were a lot of trends. And there were a lot of trends that were just in your face, right? If you're looking for them, you're going to see them. Now, many of my peers, they weren't looking for it. This was just a job for them. I was actually very much in self-development. I really enjoyed the works of Jim Rohn. I really enjoyed the works of Dennis Waitley, which you're going to see some quotes here coming up here from both those gentlemen. I did enjoy Tony Robbins. He got a little weird for me later on down the line. I enjoyed some seminal writers like Earl Nightingale, and Napoleon Hill. And I'll talk a little bit about those gentlemen too as well. So understanding success mechanisms in leadership and common sense ideals was something that was very drilled into me from these professional development gurus. And so as I was listening to these gurus and going through their different classes and seminars and workshops, I was seeing things in these students that really bothered me. And they were not setting themselves up for success. And there was a lot of issues that they were displaying. So what I did was for this particular presentation, I'm going to say that I spoke with over 1,500 online students. It was much more than that, but it was, they were all online students, and they were undergraduate and graduate students. The way of data collection was really through observation and dialogue. And it was speaking with students on a daily basis, trying to understand what was going on in their world. What was their thought processes? When you ask them, what do you want to do with your life? And they're going to school for a business degree, and they say, I'm just going to work in the coal mine with my father because that's what my father did. That it doesn't resonate, right? It's like, well, what do you want to do? So there was a lot of disconnect between what students wanted, what students were going to school for, and what students could do potentially with their life. They just didn't know better. They did not have the common sense ideals that we take for granted, I believe, in an educational realm and as academics. I also deployed what's called the appreciative advising model, and I'll go on a little bit more on that too. And I'll talk about two pieces of the pie within that model. And then we're going to look a little bit at the anchor, because my book's called The Seven Anchors. And we're going to look at the anchor as why is it important? Why is it a symbolic gesture for this book? Everyone likes 5 principles, 5 tactics. How about 7 anchors, right? So I use the word anchor for a reason. So let's talk a little bit about appreciative advising. Now, if you're familiar with appreciative inquiry, which is researching and reviewing and interviewing businesses or organizations to find the best of what's happening within organizations. This is a theory, a model that was actually developed by David Cooper-Ryder and Diana Whitley. It was actually David Cooper-Ryder's PhD dissertation, appreciative inquiry, and just kind of blew up. And it seems like in today's world, if you go on Google and you type appreciative, you'll get inquiry, you'll get advising, you'll get interviewing, you'll get just a plethora of branches that came off of appreciative inquiry. And so appreciative advising is one of those branches. And I'm a certified appreciative advising coach. I got certified from the University of South Carolina. And so I was able to utilize this methodology with my students. And so the first the first piece of pie that you do with any appreciative model is to discover. And what we did is we talked with our students and discovered their true intentions. What are their goals? What are they looking to do? What are they, what's their plan in life? Who's their support systems? What can we do to get them moving forward, with the degree if they're having issues with their retention? What we found out is a lot of students, I would say close to 75% of the students that we spoke with did not have a plan in place. They did not have any sort of idea of what's going to happen a week from now, let alone 5 years from now. And many of them did not have support systems, which really bothered me. But it also it didn't surprise me from the students that were coming into the program. A lot of them were closet college students. A lot of them were taking classes on the DL. They would go to a room or to a closet, or they would take their laptop to a McDonald's, and they would take classes because they didn't want their friends and family to get mad at them. Say, well, why are you going to school? Or they were told they couldn't do it, right? From a family member. So they didn't have that support system in place. Then once we figured out, what was their why, then we sat down and said, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to dream about? Dream about anything you want to do. What is one thing that you would love to do? And we would get them really thinking about what they would want to do once they had their degree. And and a lot of them were like, well, I'm going to stop after I graduate and get a job. And we'll talk a little bit about an anchor, a component of one of the anchors here concerning continued learning here in just a moment. But we wanted to make sure that they were continually learning, and we wanted to make sure that they were dreaming, right? We wanted to make sure that they continued to look forward into that's the great thing about appreciative inquiry, right? They could have something negative, right? But if you talk about the positive and you concentrate on the positive, the whole theory behind appreciative inquiry is if you work on the positive components that are working, those eventually will overtake the negative. And so that's what we were hoping to do with this dream component. And then of course, we would go into design their degree program and deliver and don't settle. There was a whole framework for it. But for this book, I was very interested in the discover phase and the dream phase. Now, what I want to make sure is we understand what an anchor is, right? Their anchors are used in boats, right? They're used to stop the momentum or hold a boat in place. But anchors are also used in a metaphorical type of form as well, which was made popular by NLP, which happens to be most people associate NLP with Tony Robbins. But an anchor is something that comes from within, right? It comes out of your daily experiences of life. It's something that you can hold on to. So no matter what is happening in your outside world, that what you're supposed to be doing, and at that moment when you follow your anchor. So an anchor can be an idea, a concept, a will, and you place it somewhere visually in your body. It could be putting your fingers together like this, and every time you put, I don't know if you can see me, yeah. Every time you put your fingers together like this, you should, and you think about having a sense of peace. Or even if you have stage fright, I've heard people who will anchor, confidence to just a moment like this before they go out on stage, put their fingers together, and they will have a sense of confidence and be able to go out on stage. Now, in my description for this presentation, I did say I wanted to provide tangible activities for students, something that we can actually have them do that they could deliver on today, nothing that's going to be ethereal. And there's nothing wrong with anything ethereal, to each their own. The law of attraction is real. I agree. I totally believe that. It's just a genie is not going to be popping out of a lamp, and going to be granting you a wish today. It takes time. And I think that that's been sensationalized through the media and through Hollywood. But the more that you think about a certain topic and you work towards that certain topic, things will start happening for you, obviously, with that momentum moving forward. And so that's I don't want you to think that I'm not looking at the non-ethereal stuff. As far as like channeling, like Abraham, if you're familiar with Abraham and those people who give life, big life advice. I don't agree with that, but that's okay. To each their own on that. So I hope you're all familiar with Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was a tycoon mogul back in the early 1900s, and he's the one who commissioned Napoleon Hill to actually write Think and Grow Rich. But Andrew Carnegie states here, people who are unable to motivate themselves must be content with mediocrity, no matter how impressive their talents are. So unpack that here for a second. People who are unable to motivate themselves must be content with mediocrity, meaning if you really are happy with status quo, and that's okay, right? You can be completely happy with the status quo. I've worked in many jobs where I would come into QB, though, if you know what that is, in a department floor, and people would just sit there and they do their thing. They don't care about being promoted. They don't care about going above and beyond. They're very happy with the 3 out of 5 that they get on their performance review. They're not looking to, be part of any committees or anything to grow themselves personally. They're content with mediocrity, okay? Though they could have intense talents for whatever they're doing. But we're never going to know that until they put their talents to the test and they remove themselves from being comfortable into the realm of being uncomfortable. And Andrew Carnegie, he was talking on this all the way back in 1900. So the first area I want to talk on here is the realm of success. Okay, what is success? So what I would ask you is, contemplate as we're going through this is, why aren't there more successful people in the world? Why is only the top 1% concerned with success? And why isn't success 101 taught in schools? Now, for that last one, we are obviously Aspen's an educational institution. I do believe that our K through 12 educational system is broken, and it hasn't been updated ever since the beginning of school. If you look, at the beginning of whenever school was began, right? If we look at technology, we'll see, we can look at the phone, right? In the 1925, 1945 or whatever, we had those big monster phones and they can only dial out like 1 or 2 people. Now we have fold phones, that can fold up and can, are basically little computers. You can launch a rocket probably from your phone. You can watch Netflix from your phone. You can do everything from your phone, but we still are learning in regular, old, boring English in classrooms. We're still learning math. We're still learning basic science. And there's nothing wrong with that because science does innovate and history will innovate too. But there are better ways in order to grow the educational field, and things do need to change, which is why I'm a big advocate for personal development in grade schools. There's a lot of clubs that go and do that. But to answer the question, why aren't more people successful in the world? What is that? Fear. People are petrified of fear, petrified of success. They are so scared. Once you start tasting success, guess what that does? That makes you uncomfortable. It makes you're into a realm that you've never been before. And guess what people want to do? They want to huddle back. They want to crawl back under the covers, and they want to be where they feel most comfortable. So in addition to the comfort zone, we also have people who you might have some friends, right? Who might be that, say, why are you doing this? Why do you want to start a business? Why do you want to go back to school, to get your degree? And it could be that they fear that they are being left behind. And so they're working to keep you down, right? And so there's a lot of reasons why success is, a lot of people don't understand success. But let me ask you this. Again, ponder, okay? What does success mean to you? All right. Success is a very trivial thought process, depending on where you live or what demographic or what culture you're in. Okay. So for us in the first world, right, success might be $1 million. We are millionaires. We live in a huge house. We drive our Teslas. We have our jobs making 6 figures. Everything is rock on, right? But what is success in the Philippines, right? It might be making $50 a week. All right. We wouldn't be able to do that here, right? Make $50 a week, but they're very content to that. The people in the Ukraine, right now, success might be, being able to evacuate, without anything happening, So what does success mean to you might be different to what success means to somebody else. So you have to be careful when you're defining success. Now, when we look at success, we see people who are successful, right? We'll see them walking down the street. They'll have the nice suit on. They're driving a Tesla. They have the awesome phone, the good jacket, the perfect hair, the beautiful skin. They're just oozing awesome, right? That's what people see. What people fail to see, and this is what I have a problem with when we see stuff on TV and we see, the sensationalization of success on TV, is you don't see what the people did underneath the iceberg, right? You don't see the persistence. You don't see the hard work. You don't see the failure, getting knocked down, getting back up again. You don't see the sacrifice, dedication, hard work, and discipline. You don't see that because it's not, it doesn't do anything, right? It doesn't do anything for the viewers. People want to see the success. People want to see, all the glamour and glitz that come with being successful. But we need to understand that success itself comes from all those areas and ideals that are underneath the waterline, right? So defined success here is the state or condition of meeting a defined range of expectations. It may be viewed as the opposite of failure. Criteria for success depends on context, like I stated, and may be relative to a particular observer or belief system. See time, okay, good. So what I want to do is I want to go through some common attributes of successful people, okay? And I touched on a little bit of this already. And again, this is coming from years of professional development and just being around the right people and reading the right things and talking with the right people. Common attributes. And again, what I want you to do is I lose focus sometimes, but this is me, picture me talking to a student. Okay, I'm kind of giving them life advice. Okay, you can take it as you want to, but again, this is something that we could talk with students. So if you say, what is success? What do you need to be successful? One of the things you need to be successful is you need to read. You need to read books, and you need to read. Nowadays with technology, you don't necessarily have to read books. We have Kindle, we have Audible, and we have all kinds of different ways that we can read. But what matters is getting in front of that information and getting in front of those different people, those different exposure points, those different models, those different frameworks. That is what is important. So if you look down at the bottom here, it says Warren Buffett reads 4 hours a day. Bill Gates reads 50 books per year. Now, if you think about that, 50 books per year, that's about 1 a week. Okay. Does he really do that? Yeah, he probably does. Arthur Blank, he's the founder of Home Depot. He reads 2 hours a day, and so on and so on. But the average successful entrepreneur reads about 17 books per year. Okay. Me personally, I try to read 2 books a week. Okay. And I don't use these apps like Blink, where they give you the summaries, right? So the way that I read books, and I tell my students this too, especially if it's a textbook that you can get on Audible and in Kindle, right? I go find a book on Kindle and I make sure that it's compatible with Audible. Okay. So that way, when I'm looking at my Kindle, Audible is reading it for me, right? So I am seeing it, I am hearing it at the same time. I am learning in 2 modalities, right? I am seeing visualization and I'm hearing audio, right? But I listen to it at 1.5 or 2.0 the speed. So if I were to read 60 minutes per day, for example, most Kindle books and Audibles are about 4 to 5 hours in length, which is about 220 to 250 pages at 2.0 speed. You can finish a book. If you start on Monday, you can finish it by Thursday in about 4 to 5 hours. Now, is that unreasonable to read 1 book a week? No. I mean, you don't have to do it every week. If you read one every 2 weeks, right? There's no reason why we can't get in front of this information and understand it and tell people, hey, you know what you need to be reading. In fact, did you know that 25% of all Americans have never even Americans who start a book only get to chapter 2? And the reason why is because their attention span can only read the chapter 2, and then once they're done, they'll put it down, and then they'll never do it. They'll never pick it up again. All right. So don't be those statistics. Look for books that are within your industry. Looking for your books that are within your, something that you're interested in. Make sure they're nonfiction. You can read fiction if you want to every once in a while as a treat, but you should really be nonfiction, autobiographies, biographies, books in your industry, books on how to make you become a better person, a better professional, a more value-driven human being. And that's a shout out to Heather, value-driven professional. All right. One thing that I also learned here is successful people have a library. Now, again, when I talk about library, I am talking about actual hardcover books, people. Hardcover, right? Books, not Kindle books. Now, Kindle books are good. There's something to be said about having a library. Now, if you were to in the book, The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley, he goes and interviews millionaires, right? To see what do they do? How are they different? What are their attributes? What do they do that's different than the average person? And one of the areas that you're very frugal people, right? They drive, used cars. They wear very worn suits. They don't eat at the luxury places, right? The people you see who have these huge houses that drive the Tesla, the really nice cars and wear the designer suits, they usually have a net worth of 0 or negative, okay? Unless they're just crazy rich. But majority of people are pretending to be rich. The real rich are very frugal. They, Warren Buffett lives in the same house he's lived in, since 1967, right? But all these millionaires had one thing in common. They had a library in their home, and it could be an office, right, with a bookshelf. That could be a library, but they had books that they could read that defined who they were and they were continually learning. And it could be a hard copy book. I mean, it could be soft copy if you want to, but hard copy just looks better. And then what I tell people is, if you don't have a library, that's okay. You can start with your office, but most 300, if you were to get a $350,000 home these days, most of them will have an office with a library function in there. If you don't have that ability, start with a bookshelf and just start collecting some books. What I tell people is go to the Goodwill, go to Salvation Army. People are always throwing away good books for like $2, right? You can start picking them up, hard copy books, and start putting them in your library. And what that does is it gives you reference material to look at different ideas, different models. If something comes up, you can pull your book out real quickly and read it. Now, there's something to be said with pulling your book out and reading it versus going to Google. You can go to Google and look it up, but I think looking at from a book, studying the material from a textbook or from a hardcover book, it's just a better way of learning. And then what you do is you replace Netflix with reading time in your library, right? So if you have the Netflix marathons, I know my wife and kids love the Netflix marathons. I sit up on my computer, they get mad at me. And I'm like, well, I'm reading this book on, right now I'm reading on design science research, right? And they're just like, oh, it's so boring. And I'm like, you know what, it's cool, I like it, right? But I'm continually learning through constant reading. Now, that doesn't mean you can't watch Netflix, okay? Stranger Things is coming on in a month, season 3. So everyone's going to want to watch that, or, the Adam Project, right? Everyone's craving the Ryan Reynolds Adam Project. And I've seen that. It's a really good movie, and it's okay to spend time with your family with that, definitely. But a majority of your time, you should be cognizant of reading. Now, I will be also jump off the bandwagon and say, I used to hate reading, people. I used to hate it. I hated it when I was in grade school. We had the system where they would just call on you. You had to read a paragraph. I was not a good reader, right? And people would make, they would laugh and sneer, and I had a big problem with public speaking after that, and I hated getting up in front of people and talking, and I hated, reading it in public, and I just hated it. Just was bad taste, negative reinforcement. I learned to end up loving it, and I learned to find what works for me, which is Kindle Audible, as well as reading every once in a while if they don't have a Kindle Audible book. But I have a huge library of books. I have boxes and boxes of books. Now, some books that I would recommend if you were going to start your own library. And the first one would be The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley, which I've already referenced in this presentation. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which is a seminal piece. If you have not read that, do read it. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which is also, which I would also say the Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, all the books that I'm talking about here are books that I have personally read, studied, and been into. There's many, many more. These were just some of the ones that I wanted to put into this presentation. The Richest Man in Babylon by George Samuel Clayson, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, and my favorite is Aliens by Alan Dean Foster. I just thought maybe that would be funny. As you can see, I'm a huge Alien fan. I'm a huge sci-fi fan, and every once in a while you gotta get that fiction going, right? So this is Newt from Aliens, and they have an alien back there that's about ready to get her. This is Sigourney Weaver and Michael Biehn, or Hicks, Corporal Hicks, and then Aliens. But this is one of my favorite movies growing up. So
Dan,
I just thought I would throw that in.
Plopped your face into Hicks's face there.
Hicks?
That would have been,
yeah, that would be funny, right? Well, Hicks is awesome. Hicks survives. I could go on that for days, but we're not going to. Number 2, and I addressed this a little bit already, always be a learner. And you never want to stop learning because life never stops teaching you. And as educators and academics, we're always learning. We're always going to seminars. We're always going to workshops. We're always reading books. If we're teaching, we're reading new textbooks. We're always preparing, and we're seeing what the new model is, what the new framework, what the new modalities are, out there in the world. And we're staying present with current research. But that's not common sense for all people, right? So active learning, again, active learning is, I would encourage my students to attend the seminars, workshops, or anything that can help them grow as a professional. In today's society, with everything being virtual, it is so easy to get into seminars. Everything is online. You can jump in and do a day seminar. The way that I tell the students is, this is your life. Your life is your Super Bowl. This is your championship, right? There's nothing else, right? You are in it to win it. So what are you going to do? You're going to prep as hard as you freaking can in order to win your Super Bowl. And so what does that mean? You're going to continue to learn. You're going to continue to be active learning. One of the things that really irritated me so much when I was talking to students back in the day was when they said, well, what are you going to do when you graduate? And they're like, well, I'm just going to stop going to school. I'm done. I'm burned out. I'm not going to go to school anymore. I hate school. And it drove me nuts. Right? Because once you stop learning, you actually, there's science that goes into the brain chemistry that, everything just begins to move in the wrong direction, right? So you always want to be a continued learner. And some professional organizations that I always recommended for my students would be Toastmasters. If you're familiar with Toastmasters, they are a professional speaking organization. Optimism Club is a good one. Now, Optimism Club, you have to be invited to get into, but what I have found is that most of Toastmasters belong to Optimism Club. So if you belong in Toastmasters, you'll get an invite to Optimism Club. Some general discipline specific, like the Academy of Management, right? Great organization, peer review, great networking opportunities. Project Management Institute, another great opportunity to learn, to take additional certifications, the PMP, CAPM, Agile, Discipline Agile. And then different student councils within the organization, or leadership councils that organizations might have. And it might not necessarily be within the school, it could be within nonprofits as well that have leadership councils or become part of a board of directors. But again, it's networking and working and constantly learning and crafting and defining your craft and really just growing as a human being, right? And as an active professional and learner. Let me see, there's a question here. Oh, okay, no, that was Heather. Okay. Some quick hints here. And if I were to give advice to students, I would say one of the biggest things you need to do is understand your industry. Now, remember from the story that I provided earlier, right, with Tom, did Tom understand his industry? He did not. He got a job, he went in, and he was completely green, and he thought that everything would be taken care of for him. And it wasn't, right? You need to understand your industry. You need to understand how to get from point A to point B. Sarah understood her industry. She understood what she was getting into. She understood how to better herself, how to place herself. She understood what the expectations were of the job. So she wasn't going to be unsuccessful in her current role. She understood the industry of what she was working in. Now, you can also take that understanding of the industry and move it into, you need to be a ferocious reader of industry newsletters, a ferocious reader of journal articles. You need to become part of one of those organizations within your industry, because if you don't, you're going to miss out on so much. You're going to miss out on so much under different types of like models and theories that are coming out, and the way things are done, environmental scans, SWOT analysis of industry standards, just there's so much out there. You need to understand your industry, and there's going to be, doesn't matter what industry you're in. You could be a plumber, you could be you can be academics, you could be an accountant. It doesn't matter what you're in. You need to go out, and there's going to be additional literature, additional seminars, and additional ways to really understand the industry. You also want to hang around other successful people and potentially have a mentor. Jim Rohn states, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around the most. So if you hang around with people that you went to college with, that, are content with the status quo, who, are working, minimum wage jobs, and they want to, and, they don't really care. They like to party or whatever. That's where you're going to be. It's just, that's how it ends up, right? The culture of what you hang around with ends up becoming part of you. If you start hanging around people who care about their future, who are striving to become better, you hear it all the time. You need to go to networking events to meet people, to talk with these people, the same people who are more successful, who are really excited about, growing themselves as professionals. So you want to hang around with people who are successful. That doesn't mean go out and find yourself a best friend multimillionaire. If you do, great. That's fine. But just find people who are successful. Read industry related publications. Is it a Wall Street Journal? Is it going to be the Journal of Academy of Management? Is it Forbes, Inc? Is it Entrepreneur? What is your industry related publications? You need to read that. Get a subscription to it. Read it. Start scanning that information every day, and then pay attention to the details. The third area I want to talk about is family and your value system. So what is your number one value? A lot of people will say, well, business is really important. If you're a sports player, athletics, sports is extremely important. Adventure is really important. But what should be your number one value? It's going to be your family, right? You should do whatever it takes to support your family. And that is one of the components of being successful. That is that support system that I was telling about, that students really, there were a lot of students that did not have that support system because of negative reinforcement from others, negative reinforcement from people within their family unit. So let me throw an example at you here. So if you look at the slide, Mr. D and his family, okay? There's no relation to Mr. D. I'm not Mr. D. Now, Mr. D is super successful. He's a multimillionaire. He runs a business. He makes around $2 million a year, but he has given himself a goal to make $10,000 in the next 2 years. Now, right now, Mr. D can have anything that he wants. He has a family and he has 2 kids, but he's always at work. He's always doing the job. He's always trying to strive to be better. His A personality is to really achieve in his job. Now, is he happy? Is Mr. D happy? He has everything he wants. He has a family. He's a multimillionaire. He has a job. He's growing his business. Is he going to be happy? Nope. Some people are, and then they end up being, they might end up being happy, in the long run. But money does not buy happiness, people. Not a chance. And money does not buy love, right? Money does not buy back missed time with your children. Money does not provide you a sense of satisfaction. It might for a very limited time, but it does not continue that satisfaction over the long haul. Mr. D might get that feeling of being lost. Now, Mr. D, he has everything going for him. He has a business. He's working on becoming a 10 millionaire, right? A decamillionaire. But he's getting divorced. He's not going to see his kids. He's missed so much stuff, and now he's depressed. So make time for your family. That's one of the biggest aspects of being successful. And I see people drowned in this all the time. And I hear just horror stories. Other areas to consider within the personal development anchor is the concept of sowing and reaping. And that's a very important concept. I could have written, there's been books written on this whole concept itself. If you look in the Bible, right, the book of Ruth, that the whole book is basically the concept of sowing and reaping. The seasons of change, if you think of the seasons, right, there's always going to be a winter that's going to be followed with a spring, a summer, and a fall. It doesn't go winter, fall, spring, summer, or winter, fall, summer, spring, or whatever. There's always a rhythm. There's always an ebb and flow. You might be in a bad time now, but the spring comes around and you will plant those seeds, and then the summer comes around. You will heap you will reap the crop, right? And then in the fall, things might die down a little bit, and then winter comes. It's an ebb and flow of life. So if things are bad now, just wait, fight through it. Things will change and will be better. An apple day philosophy, which is a very unique take, as well as focusing on the majors and not the minors. So many people focus on minor details. It is so frustrating. It drives me nuts. If they were to take care of the major components, and this is what appreciative advising is all about, focusing on big ticket items, the positive aspects, and eventually the minor things will go away. right? Or they will magically fix themselves. But too many people avoid the major aspects of life and just deal with the nitpicky little minor things. And then they wonder why things are going so bad, or they're not getting things done, or things aren't happening the way they want them to. So those are just some things to consider. How am I doing on time, Kevin? Looks like I'm at 53, a couple more minutes.
You're good. You take as much time as you got. You had the full hour plus any time that question and answers can go. So
Okay.
I say you have a good 10 more minutes or so if you want to stay within reasonable time.
Okay. The next anchor we're going to talk about, we'll go through these pretty quickly here. They're not going to be as in depth as the first one, is getting creative. Now, if you think about getting creative, you got to think about having a plan for your life, right? So Earl Nightingale here states, the more intensely we feel about an idea or a goal, the more assuredly the idea buried deep in our subconscious will direct us along the path to its fulfillment. What is that? That is the concept of the law of attraction, right? The more you think about something, the more that it's going to move you in the right direction, but you got to have a plan in place. You got to know where you're going, right? If you don't know where you're going, you're just going to be aimlessly running around, nothing happening, right? An example is, if you're a captain of a ship and you go out to sea, but you don't have a map, where's the port, right? You're going to end up in the middle of the ocean, just floating around, going in circles. You might end up somewhere, but it's not going to be where you want to go. If you had that map, if you had that plan, you would be on pace to get to where you needed to go. So you need to know where you're going. And this is, again, when I talk with students, one of the biggest things that frustrates me is, what are you going to do when you graduate? What do you want to do when you grow? It's part of the dream component. What do you want to do when you grow up, in essence, right? And they're like, I don't know, graduate, started, I want to work in business, right? Something really generic. Well, what business, and you got to drill it down. And they don't have a plan. So you sit down and you work with them and build out a plan to help them get to where they're going. So what is your plan? Think about it. What is your plan? Do you have a roadmap? Do you have a road mapped out with big events? So think of it as a strategic plan for yourself. Okay. We think of strategic plans for organizations, right? When they're doing their 5-year, 10-year plans, we don't think of strategic plans for us. What is our 5-year? What's our 1-year plan? 5-year plan, 10-year plan for our big events? Where do we see ourselves? What are we going to do? And Stephen Covey actually, in his 7 effective, I can't remember the book, it evades me. It's the 7 effective, whatever, but he has his readers write a mission statement. And I actually did this event. I did it, went down, wrote a mission statement, and I put it in a frame and I put it on my wall. I read it every day for about 4 years. Me and my wife looked at it and we realized I had accomplished every freaking thing on that mission statement. It was getting a doctorate. It was publishing a book. It was buying a house. It was finding a good, it was all really big action items, and I accomplished every single one of them. When I wrote it, I had no plans of getting a doctorate. I was just throwing it out there. As Kevin likes to ask, popcorn the idea, so I ended up accomplishing every single thing on that mission statement. And I still have the mission statement. I still have that. I have it framed in a box in my garage, but I still have it today. Do you have a financial plan to development for retirement? If you don't have a financial plan development in this day and age, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So you need to get a guy, right? I got a guy. I never thought I would have a guy, but I have a guy, and that guy helps me with retirement for my family. You got to have financial planning. Are you in your dream job? If not, what is it? What are you going to do, when you get there, or how are you going to get there? It's okay. If you want to take your time to get to your dream job, you might have to, take the ladder of success and take some jobs that you don't necessarily want to do or aren't necessarily your dream job, and that's okay. But once you get, what are you going to do to get there? How are you going to get there? You need to have a plan, right? Do you see how this is working? Are you wanting to start a business? If so, what? Being a consultant and working with startup businesses, I always say, everyone's like, I want to start a business. I want the tax benefits. What do you want to do? I don't know. Oh my God. So what I want you to do is an action item. If you take out a piece of paper, if you want to, it's up to you. But I challenge you to write down 5 steps you're going to take to help you grow as a person. Okay. Think about that. Just write down 5 steps. You don't have to turn it in. You're not going to be turning it in or anything, but just think about these 5 steps, right, to help you grow. Setting goals. Again, we're probably all sick of setting goals, but it bears repeating. It always, there's a reason why the topic keeps coming up. Setting goals is the greatest gift that you can give yourself and your family. Again, and this comes to planning, right? Setting small and large term goals. Jim Rohn states here, goal setting is powerful because it provides focus. It shapes our dreams. It gives us the ability to hone in on the exact actions we need to perform to achieve everything we desire in life. Now, if I were to read that to one of the students, back when I was an academic advisor, I go, well, what are your goals? They don't have goals. They don't have plans, right? It's common sense for us being in academia to have goals. We set down, we know what we're doing, we know where we're going. We should know where we're going, but it's not common sense, right? That's why you see all these goal presentations popping up. That's why you see SMART goals everywhere. If I see SMART goals again, I'm gonna puke, right? But there's a reason why they keep coming up, because people are not doing it. People do not understand it, and it's so important to understand how to set goals. Visualization, and this will be the last slide here. And then I'll go into an overview. I'm going to miss one of the anchors, but that's okay. Dennis Waitley, I name dropped him earlier as being a person that I listened to, and he developed a program called The Psychology of Winning. And what he does, he's not like a motivational guru. He's not Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Les Brown, Bob Proctor. He was a scientist. He literally was a neuroscience scientist, and he studied the brain. And what he did in the early 80s, he worked with the US Olympic team. He also worked with astronauts in Apollo 2. But the biggest thing is he worked with the 1980 Olympic team, track and field team, most importantly. And what he did is he put up all these neurotransmitters on their brains and told them, listen, I want you to visualize the exact steps that you would go through if you were running a race. So he would say, just picture getting up to the starting line, getting all, warmed up, and then hearing, smelling the air, and then, hearing the gun, and then running, and picture yourself running. Lo and behold, every area within the brain lit up as if they were actually running it, right? Their brain was being told, they were feeling that they were actually running the event, though they were sitting in a chair with neurons all over their head, right? So basically, so in essence, when you can visualize something, you can materialize it. There's something to this. And, there's gurus out there who do meditation, visualization techniques and different things like that. And that's cool, right? There's something to it. And I'm not going to sit here and say I know all about it. I'm just telling you that if you visualize something, it works. Science has proven that it works. So if you let your mind go there, your body will too. And then the last anchor, productivity, we would talk about journaling, remembering why, giving back, listening, and modeling, sleep and rest, and exercise. If you don't like how things are, change it. You're not a tree. That's one of my favorite goals here from Jim Rohn. Giving back, again, going back to financial retirement, a little law that I live by, and I tell my students to live by. And when I consult with people who have questions about this, I tell them to live by too, based on the richest man in Babylon. 10% savings, 10% goes to church or tithing, 10% give it away in form of charity, and you live off 70%. You can become a multimillionaire with this formula. So what does this presentation have to do with education, right? So bringing it all together, these are some trends that I had found. I'd found a lot of trends and I provided solutions to them. So I didn't actually do a complete study, right? I actually provided solutions in the form of this book. And what this does is it provides students directions, right? You're giving them you need the plan, you need to do this. Let me help you, let me help you provide a plan. Because again, in first world, we have first world problems, right? It's not all common. It's not going to be common sense to everybody. Giving our students tangible tasks that they can be completed and be discussed, right? Having them read a book and discuss a chapter, having them, fill out a financial planner or something, right? It's a tangible task that they can do today that they can have benefits from tomorrow. Not, motivational brouhaha jumping around and feeling the spirit, right? You might not necessarily get what you ask for in that aspect. I wanted tangible tasks today. Provide hope for our students' future, providing hope for the future as leaders. Because I'm scared for our generation, the generation that came up, it's scary, right? We are lacking leadership. There's a huge gap that's not being filled, and it's scary. That's why you're seeing people working into their 70s and 80s who are CEOs of these organizations, because the succession planning just isn't there. Help our students to find a legacy through teaching. And the information, this is not information that's going to be found in traditional schools, though it should be, but it's common sense. Like I said, I bear repeating, it's common sense to people who are in academia, who understand this, who do already work with a lot of these different aspects. But this book's not for you. This book is for those who don't understand the common sense ideals and need to have that leg up. So bringing it all together, hopefully you'll have a little deeper understanding of personal and professional development. It is not all brouhaha. Success is in the eye of the beholder. Remember, I told you what success is, but there are steps that you can take to be successful today, bringing the intangible today. There are many ways to be creative in your life, but you do need a plan, and you visualize and achieve. And lastly, without productivity, what is there? Giving back and financial planning open up so many doors. All right, so please let me know if you have any questions. There's my name, here's my email address. We can open the floor to questions. Can't guarantee I'll know the answers, but I can try.
I'll let either Andre or Jojo, if they have any questions, go first. Based on some of the anchors that Dr. Zimmerman discussed, do y'all notice, and I do think it was good that he said they're common sense, and a lot of it did just sound like common sense, right? Have a plan is the most important thing. But based on his anchors of success within your either professional world or student world, how do those anchors sort of materialize in your world? How are they, manifesting themselves daily? Or is it something that still was a little bit of difficulty to make happen, right? If I'm not used to writing stuff down and someone isn't around prompting me, like Daniel's a coach, he's the one who's telling people, well, let's write it down, right? Let's put it on a Post-it, let's put it up where you can see it. Because that's part of the methodology. It's also a part of the success behaviors that he mentioned when they go and interview all these people, who are successful and look at their daily behaviors and habits. They're putting stuff into writing. I actually attended the Stephen Covey. It was like a 2 or 3 day workshop. And that was one of the first things that he said is write down into print, so that you're constantly visually reminding. But anyway, I don't know if Jojo or Andre has used any of these anchors or techniques and have any experiences around that. Let's start with y'all too.
Hey, Dr. Thrasher, Andre Rosedale here. So in my careers, I had a lot of mentors, paramilitary. I was in the Army before I was in law enforcement. So a lot of this stuff is familiar. And like Dr. Zimmerman said, it's kind of common sense with some good mentoring is kind of what brings it out. And one of his last points on kind of worrying about the future of where things are going is there's a lack of mentoring. And I don't know if that comes from budgeting issues or just organizations, getting along to just keep moving forward and not really worrying about their mentoring their personnel and building teams. So
the assumption there may be, oh, we can do some initial training, and then after that, they'll just organically learn by doing.
Right.
We've all had those
Right.
jobs where you come up and get a little orientation. It's like, okay, just get out there and do it and ask your peers. And you do kind of learn it by doing. But at the same time, it's not always good for the person who's going through that experience if their mentors aren't, a good mentor, let's say.
Well, what I've found is that people who are tasked to find succession planning or are within an organization that have to, gear the people to the right talent, through the right talent management, they don't know what they're doing. They've just skipped up the ladder, right? Because they just kind of fill the gaps. And then next thing you know, they're talent management, director, and they're in charge of succession planning, and they have no idea how to train.
The Peter
And it
principle.
all, what was that?
Isn't that called the Peter principle in business, where you get promoted so quickly before you develop skills at the intermediate levels, and now you're in such a high level of authority, but you didn't have the skills to get there, and you've sort of outgrown your abilities. Is that what you're talking about?
I had never heard of the Peter principle, but yeah, absolutely. But it's happened in so many organizations. That's why you see the CEOs of these organizations, they're 70, 80, 90 years old that are not retiring, or they're asked to come back, right? Because they don't have leadership. They have no one that can take over. There's no one that sees the visions. There's no one that can help them, help the organization move forward. It doesn't mean that people aren't smart. It's just the right people aren't there, right? They didn't plan.
Sometimes people have been around for so long that the organization has become them.
Organizational
Like the
culture
guy
aspect,
of Southwest. I mean, can you imagine if he ever leaves or retires? I mean, for the past 25 years, it's been built around him and who he is. We all see his face. We know who he is and everything, right? And all of a sudden, it's not him. It's hard to succeed from circumstances like that. But I do understand what you mean. Hopefully, not every circumstance is like that. But it goes back to one of your anchors. There's not a plan even. It's just,
No plan.
I want to check JoJo's comment here. He has, thank you for the words of wisdom, he says, but he also thinks that mentoring stands out to him as something that would contribute, obviously, to people's success, including his own. And it is true in almost all the research that exists. If you have a mentor who's more proficient in your area, then you obviously will do better than if you don't have a mentor and you got to figure it out on your own. A couple of things, Dan, I just kind of want to highlight that I think are always important towards the end. And you mentioned, obviously, read. Read. That is one of the defining characteristics of successful people, because they're always keeping their mind active and they're always keeping their mind current through reading and not watching TV. I notice when I put TV on, I only do it really towards the end of the day. It's almost an instant sedative to me. As soon as I put TV on, it's so mindless to me that I instantly get sleepy and want to go to sleep. But when I read a book, I'm active, and so I think that's the key. It goes back to what you said, is always be a learner. And I really appreciate you sharing that quote that said, always be a lifelong learner, because life doesn't stop teaching.
Right.
Every day, life going to teach you something. So you better have the learning mentality, or you're always going to be frustrated because everything is changing. And then I also think it was important towards the end that you said, out of all the things that successful people can do, the most important thing they can do is take care of their family. And it is true. If things in your home are not in order, whatever that may be, because now, and it is sort of a little bit of a slippery slope, because you consider and see why I work so much, because I'm trying to take care of my family. And as a result of working so much, I neglect my family. Right. And so it's a vicious cycle where you think you're doing the right thing. And unfortunately, it may sometimes backfire. But the most consistent thing through all of our presentations this week
And there's a theme that I constantly hear. And first of all, it is be intentional. Know what you're doing. That's the concept of a plan, right? Is be intentional. But also when you're doing the other things that successful people do, then you're following their models, which is being intentional. And if it is, stay current in your field, stay active with the knowledge that's out there. And I really like the other quote, and I've heard this several times, and I can tell that you're a coach because this was something I heard in one of our coactive coaching model presentations from the past. And this was that you not only do you have to have a plan, but you have to have the network systems in place to support the plan. And that involves your own commitment, but there's times where, we've heard people have to sort of go off into the library and Starbucks and coffee shops in order to escape their friend group, because it's actually their friend group that is envious of their progress and may sabotage their progress. And they're very powerful forces. Your family can be this way too. Yep. You're getting ahead, and the time you're spending doing that is distracting from us. So one of the themes that I've heard evolve from the coactive coaching scenario is it sort of is tell me who your friend group is, and I'll tell you where you'll be in 5 years.
Right.
And I forgot what they call it. They don't call it the friend group, but they say basically, and you mentioned it, if you want to change your future, change your friends. And because if you hang around successful people, you're going to act like successful people. When you hang around bums, you're going to act like bums, right? And so
absolutely.
Sometimes, unfortunately, the bums are your family members, and you can't really escape them. And you're born into that, difficulty of escaping the people you love. At the same time, you're trying to get ahead without hurting their feelings that you're leaving them behind. So there's these struggles in life that are real, that sometimes can be so powerful. There's certain cultures where going to college is not the first option. So imagine within those cultures, the incredible forces that are against them to succeed down a path. So
absolutely.
Dr. Zimmerman, good luck in your revision of your book. I do think you're right that the world has changed in the past 10 years, that what we thought were the behaviors to be successful then are a little different now. And continue to get that message out there, continue to share your passion for student success, because, starting out in financial aid and academic advising gives you a really great foundation for what you do now, which is still look out for students, and all these success variables promote that. Daniel, awesome. You have a good evening.
Well, thank you for having me do this.
Yeah, no
I hadn't looked at this book in a long time, so it kind of
brought
back some excitement.
You didn't even write that on your sticker 5 years ago. I was thinking when you said you wrote something on a sticker, and man, look at that. You look at 5 years and you accomplished everything. I think you should have wrote some other stuff on that sticker, like win the lottery, own a country, things like this. If you're going to accomplish whatever's on your list, let's get really big goals on that list, man. So anyway,
big audacious goals. Yep.
Yeah. Dr. Zimmerman, take care. I'll see you around. All righty. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.